The moment it hit me, I was standing in line for coffee, staring at the back of a stranger's jacket and feeling strangely empty. Nothing bad had happened. That was the part that bothered me most. Before we begin, please support Mindshift Stories by subscribing, liking the video, and leaving a comment. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories with the world. I used to believe unhappiness came from obvious places: failed plans, broken relationships, missed opportunities. At the time, my life didn't fit any of those categories. I had a stable job, a clean apartment, and a routine that worked well enough. Every morning, I woke up at the same time, drove the same roads, and greeted the same people with the same polite expressions. On paper, things were fine. But internally, I carried a quiet dissatisfaction I couldn't explain. It wasn't sadness, it was more like a constant background noise, a dull pressure telling me something was missing, even when I couldn't name it. I remember thinking, maybe this is just adulthood. Maybe contentment was overrated and this low-level restlessness was normal. My job was in an office building downtown, one of those glass and concrete places where time feels suspended. People came in, worked, left, and repeated the cycle without much reflection. I was good at my job, not exceptional, but reliable. I met deadlines, avoided conflict, and kept my opinions neutral. That had become my default approach to life. Stay agreeable, stay safe. Every day during my lunch break, I walked to the same small cafe across the street. Same order, same seat by the window, same 15 minutes of scrolling through my phone while half watching people pass by outside. It felt comforting in a way, like proof that at least something was predictable. Still, there was this assumption I held without questioning it. I'll feel better when something changes, when I earn more, when I find a better relationship, when life finally aligns the way it's supposed to. Happiness, in my mind, was always slightly ahead of me, waiting at the next milestone. That belief went unchallenged for a long time. One afternoon, as I stood in line at the cafe, something small disrupted my routine. The woman in front of me, maybe in her late 60s, turned around and smiled. Not a polite, automatic smile, a genuine one, like she was actually happy to see another human being. "Busy day?" she asked casually. I hesitated. It was such a normal question, yet it caught me off guard. "Yeah," I said, "same as always." She nodded, still smiling. "Same can be good." That was it. She turned back around, ordered her coffee, and moved aside. The interaction lasted maybe 10 seconds, but something about it stuck with me. Not what she said exactly, but how she said it. There was no rush in her voice, no edge, just calm acceptance. I watched her sit at a small table near the window. She didn't pull out her phone, she just sipped her coffee slowly, looking around the room like she wasn't trying to escape the moment. I remember feeling a mild irritation toward her, which surprised me. It made no sense. She hadn't done anything wrong. Still, I thought, what is she smiling about? That thought came with an uncomfortable realization. I couldn't remember the last time I'd smiled for no reason. Over the next few days, I noticed that feeling lingering. It wasn't dramatic, just a subtle awareness that something about my internal state didn't match my external life. I began paying more attention to small interactions, the way coworkers spoke, how people reacted to delays, the tension I felt when things didn't go exactly as planned. One morning, my commute was delayed by traffic. Normally, that would have annoyed me. I'd grip the steering wheel, mentally calculating how much time I was losing. That day, I felt the irritation rise, and then something else happened. I noticed it. I caught myself thinking, here it is again. That awareness felt strange, like stepping slightly outside myself. Later that same week, I ran into my coworker Mark in the break room. Mark was known for being unusually upbeat, not loud or forced, just consistently calm and friendly. I had always assumed he was either pretending or oblivious. "How's it going?" he asked. I shrugged. Work. He laughed lightly. "Yeah, still, not a bad way to spend the day." There it was again, that same idea. Not bad. I watched him pour his coffee, humming quietly, completely unbothered by the noise around us. For the first time, instead of dismissing it, I felt curious. That curiosity followed me home that night. I sat on my couch, lights off, city glow filtering through the window. I thought about how often I postponed happiness, how often I told myself, I'll feel better later, as if happiness was a reward that required certain conditions. I realized something unsettling. I was waiting for my circumstances to give me permission to be content. The turning point didn't come with a dramatic event. It came the next morning when I woke up feeling the same familiar heaviness and made a small decision. Instead of immediately reaching for my phone and diving into news, messages, and comparisons, I stayed still. I asked myself a question I had never seriously considered. What if nothing changes today and I choose to be okay anyway? It felt almost irresponsible to think that way, like I was lowering my standards or ignoring problems. But I wasn't denying reality. I was experimenting with my response to it. At work, when a project was delayed, I noticed the tension rise again. My instinct was to blame the situation, to let it confirm my internal narrative that things were always slightly off. Instead, I paused. I took a breath. I focused on what I could control: the next email, the next task, the tone of my response. Something subtle shifted. Over the following days, I became aware of how automatic my reactions had been, how often I labeled moments as bad or wasted without questioning those labels. A long line, a boring meeting, an awkward silence. Each one quietly reinforced the idea that life was something to get through. I started experimenting, not changing my life, but changing my perspective. During my lunch walks, I left my phone in my pocket. I noticed the sound of footsteps, the rhythm of traffic, the way light reflected off windows. It didn't suddenly make everything beautiful, but it made it real. One afternoon, I saw the older woman from the cafe again. She was sitting at the same table reading a paperback book. As I passed by, she looked up and smiled, like she recognized me. Not because we knew each other, but because we shared a space. That's when it clicked. Her happiness wasn't tied to novelty or success or ease. It was rooted in presence, in choosing how to experience what was already happening. I had always assumed happiness was something you discovered, something hidden behind the right job, the right relationship, the right version of yourself. What I was beginning to understand was quieter and more unsettling. Happiness was a decision I kept postponing. This realization didn't fix everything. I still had stress, I still had doubts, but my relationship with those things changed. They no longer felt like obstacles to happiness, just parts of being human. When something went wrong, I noticed my thoughts instead of automatically believing them. When something went right, I allowed myself to feel it without suspicion. I stopped waiting for permission to be content. The consequences were subtle but profound. I became more patient, not because I tried to be, but because I wasn't fighting the moment as much. Conversations felt lighter. Time felt less compressed. Even boredom lost some of its weight. I realized how often I had confused control with happiness. I thought if I could control outcomes, I'd finally relax. But control was exhausting. Choice, on the other hand, was free. The hidden truth was this: happiness isn't about ignoring pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that between what happens and how we respond, there is space. And in that space, we choose. That choice doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel heroic. Most days it feels ordinary, but it's there. In traffic, in silence, in routines we once resented. Now, when I stand in line for coffee, I notice the moment. The warmth of the cup, the quiet hum of conversation, the fact that I'm here at all. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because I stopped treating happiness like a future event. Sometimes I still catch myself slipping into old patterns, waiting, assuming, postponing. But now I notice sooner, and that noticing changes everything. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. None of us do. But I know this: happiness isn't something I'm chasing anymore. It's something I choose again and again in the smallest moments. And the question I keep coming back to is simple. If nothing in your life changes today, what would it look like to choose differently anyway?